Hello and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast. I'm so excited to introduce my guest today, Jessica Rector, who is a keynote speaker, a #1 best-selling author. She's written 13 books, and she is the founder of the Say Yes Experience, where she says yes for 100 days. It's not about saying yes to everything. It's about saying yes to things that align with you, but it's also about getting outside your comfort zone, embracing that discomfort in order to grow. And once we start living intentionally, thinking about what we're saying yes to, we can bring in that element of play and fun into our life. I'm a big proponent of moving into places of discomfort in order to grow. And this is a fun way to do it. So I hope you'll enjoy this. If you're enjoying the podcast, please take a moment to give us a like, a share, and a subscribe. And I'm going to hop on in with Jessica. I hope you'll enjoy. Hello, and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast, a place to explore possibility through mindfulness, movement, and self-discovery. Our intention is to deliver insight and inspiration while fostering conversations that are genuine, unfiltered, and deeply human. We hope you will enjoy today's episode. Hi, Jessica. Good morning, and welcome to the Connected Community Podcast.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yes, I'm excited to have you because sometimes I feel like I have heavier topics, and this one's going to be super fun for my listeners.
Yes, yes.
Yes. Yes, yes.
Yes, yes. I didn't realize that. Yeah.
So I just wanted to share a little bit about your background. You have an MBA, you're a #1 best-selling author, and you've authored 13 books, which is
Yes.
insane. And you're a speaker and a consultant for some major companies. And the thing that we're going to dive into today is 100 days of saying yes.
Yes, 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 we are. Yes, yes, yes.
And as soon as I heard this topic, I was instantly drawn to it because I think that as we get older, we start to retract and say less yes more often, or we're saying yes to things that aren't in alignment. Do you find that?
Yeah, I mean, so true. As soon as you said that we're not saying yes very often, I thought, or we're saying yes to the wrong things, right? Which oftentimes I hear from clients is, I don't want to say yes more because I'm already overwhelmed. Well, it's not about saying yes to more things just for the sake of saying yes. It's about finding those things that light you up, that fill you with joy and make you happy. And how are you saying yes to those things that'll really stretch you?
Yes.
Yes.
So let's talk about what even prompted this path to saying yes, and then what about the 100 days was important?
So I'll start from the beginning, really. So pre COVID, I was the only keynote speaker on burnout. And so once COVID hit and organizations became a lot more aware of the importance of preventing and beating burnout, I was on the road more than I was home. And I had a 9-year-old son at the time. And what I wanted to do when I got home was just stay on the couch and not move because I was constantly exhausted. And he wanted to go out and have fun and do things. And so one night when I was packing for a trip, he came in my room and he just said, "You're leaving again? You just got here." And my eyes started welling up with tears because it just really rang true for me. I did just get there, but I needed to leave again. And I gave him a hug and I said, "Buddy, I'll be back in just a couple days." And he pulled away and he said, "I have a really great idea. When you get back, let's start saying yes to stuff." And I
Mm.
thought, that sounds exhausting. Like, I just want to lay on the couch. And he said, "No, let's find the things that light you up and bring you joy and make you happy again." And it's almost as though he could sense that I
Mm.
wasn't in that place of happiness for myself. And so I said, "That is a really great idea." And so when I got back, that was my first say yes, just to the idea, right? And then when I got back, he, without knowing, held me accountable because he went and while I was gone, had done some searching and found a really cool like ice cream place around town. He knows how much I love ice cream. And so we went there. And as I sat there, just like with with kids when you haven't seen him for a while, he was just talking 90 miles a minute, and I was just trying to keep up with what he's saying about whom, and I just started laughing just being in the moment listening to him, and I couldn't remember the last time I had laughed that hard. And
Mm.
as we left that ice cream place, he said, "We gotta do this again, mommy." And I said, "Yes, we have to." And so then he just started finding things around town that was like, "Okay, let's go-karting. Let's go for a hike or a walk, but instead of it just being a walk, let's turn it into what can we find or a scavenger hunt, different types of things like this." So it started getting our brains, my brain specifically, like rewired for what am I missing out on because I'm just going through the motions, going on autopilot. I'm constantly busy and I'm not really active, present, and engaged with so many aspects of my life. And so from there, we started kind of toying with the idea of, well, it doesn't just have to be local. Because when you start saying yes in small little ways, it expands your mind into what's possible, right? Bigger ideas and things. So then we started finding bigger adventures around the world and kind of once in a lifetime experiences. But through the process of all these say yes experiences, what I found was it was actually what I really needed to prevent burnout in myself and
Mhm.
enhance my mental health, right? So finding the joy and the happiness and all that kind of stuff, but really finding fulfillment and purpose and all those things that are kind of theory for a lot of people. But when you go in and you actually start living intentionally, you end up finding those things. And so from there, we were doing all these kind of big experiences. And then I said, well, how can I really stretch myself and lean into discomfort? So I created this 100-day say yes challenge, and everything that I put on or, had friends come up with, I would post and ask people, what are some cool ideas? A lot of people would say adrenaline type things, go
Mhm.
skydiving, go bungee jumping, and all those things are really inside my comfort zone. So it had to be really things that made me lean into discomfort, whether they are big things or really small things. So that's how kind of
Mhm.
that say yes experience started. But then how can I expand that even more so I can grow and learn in the process?
Yeah. So I would love for you to share some of the things that you did that were super outside of your comfort zone that stretched you.
So the interesting thing is through the process, I came up with what we call the discomfort code, which is really 7 different areas of discomfort that we as humans have. But what I found through the process is, like I just said, people would offer me all these ideas that they thought would be outside my comfort zone
Mhm.
because they were outside their comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
They were really uncomfortable for them, but they were inside my comfort zone. So we all have different things that lead to discomfort and different levels of
Mhm.
discomfort in each of those. So some of the things that may not be uncomfortable for me would be very uncomfortable for other people and vice versa. So for me, I have a massive, huge fear of cats. It stemmed from my childhood. And it was something that, when we don't tackle it as kids, it just replays in our head and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. This fear does. And so I had such a big fear that if I saw a cat, I would literally intentionally go and walk on the other side of the street because
Mhm.
I just thought, okay, well, what if it attacks me? What if it jumps on me? What if it scratches me? Like just that discomfort of pain and safety came in for me. And so one of the things I did was I went to a cat cafe and I didn't just look at the cat and be in the room with the cat. I put it on my lap. I held it. I was like in the vicinity, which last
Mhm.
year, if you would have told me I would have done that, I would have said, no way,
Yeah.
no way. I have no desire to do that. Now, that doesn't mean I'm going to go out tomorrow and get a cat, which I will not, but it just means that when we lean into that, something great
Mhm.
really happens on the other side of that. And for me, it was just acknowledging that all that story that I was telling myself in my head about pain and safety around cats didn't actually exist, right? It's just a story that we buy into and it becomes our truth. And so, how can we really break that down and stop living in that fear? And
Mm-hmm.
so, for me, that was a big one. Another thing, I get really, 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 really grossed out by hair, like hair on the ground, hair
Yep.
in the tub, hair in the shower. Ugh, it really grosses me out. And so I would typically call someone to come and fix my sink to unclog it. Well, instead of doing that, I did that myself. I mean, granted, I had big old up to the
Yeah.
elbow leather gloves
Uh-huh.
on because I was like, no. But just the sight of that was really uncomfortable and made my stomach turn. So again, they don't have to be big trips, they can be if that leads to discomfort for you, like traveling solo or going to another country. But again, I've done that several times, so that's not uncomfortable for me. It's a lot of times the things that we don't think about. So making the exact same recipes over and over, that's a big thing for me. I'm very not creative in the kitchen. I like
Mm-hmm.
to just what's quick, what's fast, what do I know, and keep doing the same thing. So it's also what can I explore in the
Yeah.
kitchen that really helps me do something different or in a different way? Because so much of life is on routine at this stage in our life that we don't even recognize it. We're not even aware of it. So it's about how can we make our life a little bit spicier, if you will,
Yeah.
and a little bit more interesting, because what that does in our brain is our brain gets really excited and it gets lit up and it's like, oh my gosh, yes, I'm learning. And when we learn, we grow and we develop and we
Mm-hmm.
can reach our next level and our goals and our potential. But we just stay stuck and stagnant and in a routine so long. Um, and we just don't know oftentimes how to work through that and get past that. So it's just about, pushing us into saying yes, especially when all these things I did, most of them when they were presented, I'd be like, nope, no, I do not want to do that. And then I literally would go, okay, that means I need to do it, especially like unclogging the hair. I was like, no, that
Yeah.
means I need to do it. So, how can we just shift our minds when we say no into a yes?
Mm-hmm. So it could be little things where we go to the same restaurant all the time and then we order the same thing, or we go on the same hike all the time, or we always go to the same um like hangout places with our friends. And
Yep.
so it's getting us out of our comfort zone, getting us out of our routine, doing something different. It's just stretching us. And it could be a small thing like that, or it could be something where we're repulsed by something and then we move towards that to stretch ourselves even more.
Yeah, it can be all, any, and, whatever you want it to be. But the more you say yes to the small things, just like the things that you named, the more you rewire your brain and to start saying yes to the big things, because you don't go from where you are now. And let's say your dream is to go see the Northern Lights. You don't
Yeah.
go from where you are now to tomorrow, you're going to go see the Northern Lights, because your brain literally says, that's impossible. There's no way that can happen to me. I don't have the money. I don't have the time. I don't have, it comes up with all these reasons and all these excuses, because as adults, that's how our brain has been programmed. And it's a habit that we've created. And oftentimes we don't even recognize it. Just in the days, we say no so many times and we don't even oftentimes know why we say no, but it's literally just the reaction we have, especially if you have kids and they ask for something, you're like, no,
Yeah, that's right.
but I want to eat this. Nope. I want to go to this restaurant. Nope. And then if you sat there and asked yourself, why am I saying no? You probably wouldn't know the answer until you really kind of peel back the layers. So my son's one of our first say yes experiences with my son was, we were in this city and I had heard that this square was really beautiful, that you needed to go see it. And so I was bound and determined to get to that square. That was my goal. I want to get to that square. I want to see it. And as we were walking, he saw these rent-a-bikes. Now, this was several years ago. Didn't even know rent-a-bikes existed at the time, and we saw them. And he said, "Mommy, let's go ride those." And I said, "No."
Mhm.
And as we kept walking, he goes, "This is a say yes experience." And I was like, "Okay, A, duly noted, like, thank you for calling me out, but B, why did I even say no?" And I had to really think about that. Well, as I thought about it, I realized that I said no because I wanted to get to the square. Now, keep in mind, the square wasn't going anywhere, whether we got there at 1 o'clock in the afternoon or 5 o'clock in the afternoon, it was still going to be there. But I was
Mhm.
so bound and, focused on that end result that I wanted to get there. And then also, I didn't want to spend the time to do it because, again, I wanted to get to the destination. And I didn't want to spend the money. We have bikes in the car, or sorry, in the garage that we never ride. Why do I
Yeah.
want to spend money on a rent a bike when you can go ride them back home? But then I said, okay, none of that is really that valid of a reason. And so I said, next time we see him, we'll ride him. And so I walked up, they were about 50 cents to rent.
Mhm.
So basically, I was saying no without even knowing the price. They were 50 cents. And then we only rode them for about 15 minutes. So again, it didn't even take a lot of time, but our initial reaction to things, especially if they deter us at all from where we want to be or where we want to be going, is to say no. And so the cool thing about that, though, is when we saw them again, we said yes, we went. And it was just a really big kind of in your face light bulb moment for me because my son, they were adult bikes and he kept trying to ride him and he was too little to reach the pedals and
Yeah.
to pedal, and he kept trying and falling and trying and falling, and then he finally got up and stood up, and it was like something clicked in his brain to just stand up and you can reach him. And I just thought, man, how often do we as adults try over and over and over in order to succeed doing something? If we're not good from the beginning because we put that expectation on ourselves, if we're not good, we're like, okay, I'm not that good. I'm not going to try that again. Or we say no before we even give it a try, thinking
Yeah.
we're going to be bad, right? And then he said, Mommy, it's your turn. I got on, and although it was just a bike, riding it around in this small little place, it was as though I was a little kid again with my arms out to the side, no hands riding your bike, the wind going through my hair, just feeling extremely liberated, free. And when was the last time I had done that? No idea.
Mhm.
Probably when I was a kid, right? But it's like we get so focused on that end result, getting to where we want to go, that we forget that there's all these opportunities that wait for us along the way. And when they're presented to us, we say no.
Yeah.
Again, with all the reasons and excuses without even realizing why we're saying no. Well, what happens when you say yes? It might be exactly what you're looking for, or it could open the door to something else and then lead you on a different path of where you're meant to be.
Mhm.
But where are we, like those type of opportunities, they exist every single day, but how often are we even being mindful that they exist?
Mhm. It makes me think of the difference between the child mentality and the adult mentality where we are goal oriented and we've got to get from point A to point B, where the kids stop along the way and they look at the bugs and they stop and they look at
Mm,
the clouds,
yes.
and it's teaching ourselves to embrace that inner child part of ourself as well.
It's so true. And we need that, especially when you think of all the stress, the burnout, the overwhelm that happens as adults. We need that play, that fun, that enjoyment in our lives even more. But oftentimes it's the last thing we think about because we're too focused on getting where we want to go.
Mhm. I like how you bring up it needs to be, pushing our own boundary, because 'cause I'm the same as you. I've gone skydiving, I've gone bungee jumping, I've traveled the world by myself, and those stretched me. They definitely stretched me in the moment, but there was something exciting about it,
Yeah.
that there was a little bit of tentativeness, but then there was also this bigger drive to move forward, where you and I talked before about, like, next week we're going to the hot springs, and it's a clothing optional hot springs, and we started going 9 years ago, and it was the most horrifying event for me when we first started
Yeah.
going to think about being in a place that was clothing optional. It was like the scariest, most awful, frightening thing that I could have done.
Yeah.
And
That'll
how
definitely push
and
you.
right, and then people in Europe, it's like not a thing at all. For my kid, it's not a thing at all. My husband, it wasn't a thing at all. But for me, there was just this mental
Mhm.
gymnastics happening that was like I was torturing myself. And so I'd love for you to talk about that, where you went into your bikini in a very public place and how that stretched you.
So, yeah, so one of the things I did was the busiest area in Fort Worth. I walked around in a bikini, and it was as I was driving there, I was literally focused on it, trying my best not to think about it, because the more I know that the more I think about it, the less likely I'll do it, the less likely I'll want to do it, right? And we'll come up with, well, maybe I'll do it tomorrow, or
Mhm.
maybe I'll go to a different area, or all these things go through our heads. And so but my son, who's 12 now, was a videographer. Now, if I think about when I was 12, I literally was embarrassed by my parents, my mom just for existing. She didn't even have to do anything. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, my mom's dropping me off. Please drop me off at the corner.
Yes.
It's like
Yes.
her just being a mom. And so I can only imagine if my mom had asked me to video her doing this at 12, I would have been horrified. So before we even get out of the car, he's like, do we have to do this? I don't want to do this. Do we have to do this? Now I'm still fully dressed at this point, and he's like, I don't want to do this. So the whole way we walk to the area, he kept saying, I don't want to do this. And the more I kept listening to that, the more it was getting in my head.
Mhm.
And so for me, it was also a reiteration of who are we listening to in our lives? And are we buying into that as though it's truth? When people say you can't do that, or you shouldn't do that, or who do you think you are? Don't start your own business. Why do you have a podcast? Like whatever it is. And we listen to that. And then it keeps us from doing what we want, being who we want, and really reaching the goals that we want to reach in life. And so I had to really focus on the task at hand and stop allowing myself to listen to him. And again, he's 12, so it's perfectly fine that he thinks that. And then as I got undressed, I was around the corner and I could feel like that anxiety come up of,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, I'm actually doing this. And so I take off my clothes and I just start walking, and at first, not really making eye contact because I don't really want to look at anybody in the eye. And then I start just plastering a smile on my face. So you couldn't tell on the outside how nervous I was feeling on the inside. I was like a ball of nerves. And so
Yeah.
as I kept walking, I was just like smiling, started waving to people. My son's like, "Do you have to wave to people?" I'm like, "I do. Yeah, hey." As I'm like walking by, I'm just waving to people. And really, I was trying to get out of my head
Mhm.
because the whole time, like, you play mental gymnastics. Like, you're sitting there constantly going, are people looking at me? Oh my gosh, I feel so uncomfortable. And the more uncomfortable you feel, and the more you tell yourself you're uncomfortable, the more uncomfortable that you'll continue to feel. So
Yes.
I was just like, this is so fun. I'm having a like just trying to tell myself whatever to
Mhm.
get out of my head. And then I turn around and I tell my son, okay, make sure that you're filming their expressions. Make sure you're getting the reactions. And he says, no one's really looking. It's like, oh, okay, interesting. And so we go through the whole process. And, as the time goes on, it gets a little bit easier. Now, I would not say comfortable. It does not get comfortable at all the whole time I was down there. It just got a little bit easier. And then once we get back to the car, I tell my son, like, I don't even think you realize what you said and how powerful it was. You said, no one's really even looking. No one's really paying attention.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me realize that we think everybody's watching,
Yes.
everybody's criticizing, everyone's paying attention. If I
Mm-hmm.
post that on social media, what are people going to think? Ooh, I got to have hair and makeup done in order to let anybody see this picture of me. Like, we sit there and think that everybody's thinking about us, everybody's judging us, everybody's paying attention, everybody's going to have an opinion. And guess what? No one really cares.
Mm-hmm.
No one really cares. So post the picture,
Yeah.
shoot the video, start the podcast, whatever it is you're wanting to do, just do it, because they may care for a hot second, but then guess what? They're on to something else. Why? Because they have all these challenges, these issues, these struggles, the things in their own life that they're trying to overcome. Maybe they're in a toxic relationship, or maybe they're at a job that they don't like, or they're having hard conversations with their children. Whatever the case is, they're
Yeah.
focused on their own life. They're really not that focused on you.
Mm-hmm.
But we get so in our head, and it holds us back from just getting out there because we think we need to show up perfect, and no
Yeah.
one really cares.
That was a light bulb moment for me at the hot springs too, as I was just mortified about taking off my clothes. And then I realized I didn't actually really care about how other people looked. I wasn't looking at them. I wasn't judging them. And then, it took me a while to realize that nobody cared what I look like either. And
Yeah.
I was just torturing myself in those
And that's what
moments.
happens so often. Like, we
Mm-hmm.
sit there and we torture ourselves. And the interesting thing is after I posted that video walking around in a bikini, I had so many people DM me, text me, reach out saying, there is no way I could do this. That is so
Yeah.
brave. That's bold. That's courageous. Like, all these things, which was great to hear, but it's, it's really meant to inspire other people. Like, maybe you don't walk around in a bikini in the busiest area in your city, but what else can you do to
Mm-hmm.
stretch yourself? Because it's not about doing that. It's just about look at your own life and how you're staying in your bubble and your comfort zone. And
Yeah.
just if you took one step outside of that, what difference would that make in your life? But they all said, there's no way I could do this. Oh my gosh, I
Yeah.
can't believe you are that brave and bold. And the thing is you can do it. You just don't want to do it. There's a
Yeah.
big difference between can you do it versus do you want to do it? Like, I did this as a challenge to
Mm-hmm.
myself. I'm not going to go do it this Sunday or anything, but you can do it. You're capable of doing it. And so one of the things I tell my son is, stop saying you can't do something. Stop saying it's hard. Stop
Yeah.
saying that it's impossible. All that, when we say we can't, when we say something's hard, and then we keep saying that over and over, we
Yeah.
convince ourselves there's no way we can do it, that it's hard, that it's impossible, you're not going to reach your goals. And so it's really about reframing your mind and creating a mindset around, how is it possible? How can I do that? How can I make this easier? Where do I need help? Those type of questions, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to keep telling ourselves something's hard and I can't do it, because all the
Mm-hmm.
people who said that are capable of doing it. They're
Or
just not
just
going to do
try
it.
it because it might not be as hard as we anticipate in our minds for it to be. I'm thinking about
True.
it took me 3 years to get this podcast going. I talked about it and I talked about it and I just didn't want to be on camera and I was just terrified. And then one day I was like, okay, F it. I'm just going to do it. And now I have so many people coming to me saying, I want to do a podcast. The same thing that I did, right? I want to do a
Yes.
podcast, and they talk about it for years with me. They've been talking about it and yet they haven't done it. And then there's a few that have. But then when when I started it, it wasn't as terrifying as I expected it to be. And all the things that I thought that were potentially going to happen or might happen haven't happened yet. And if they do, then I'll be okay.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and I think that's part of the biggest issues we have as adults is we just keep thinking about it and thinking about it, and we play every scenario over in our head, and the scenarios that we play in our heads are never good scenarios. They're
Mm-hmm.
always, what if
Yes.
this happens? I'm not going to look good. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. Is anybody going to listen? Why am I even bothering? Like, all of
Mm-hmm.
those scenarios, as opposed to reversing it. If you think about every innovation, every friendship, every business, anything that like it all started by someone saying, what would happen if, meaning like, what would happen if I created this? If you think of anything in life, relationships, anything, it all starts because someone says, what would happen if I had this conversation with someone? If I took this piece and added it to this piece, what would it create?
Mm-hmm.
Meaning they're thinking bigger and they're thinking positive, as opposed to, I don't know why I'm going to talk to this person. This person's not going to talk to me. They're not going to want to have a conversation with me, right? Because the
Yeah.
friendship isn't going to happen if you never have a conversation. So it all has to start with people thinking bigger and thinking that it's possible to fill in the blank, have a successful podcast, do well, know how to carry on a conversation during a podcast, all of that, instead of what I call what ifing yourself down and just thinking all negative around it.
Well, and we have to fall down a few times before we can
Oh, yeah.
before we could become skilled at something, just like riding that bike. You fall off, you fall off, you fall off, and then you figure it out. Even
Mhm.
with podcasting, you don't come on and you're perfect and you just develop these skills, or public speaking, or any kind of physical
True.
activity. It takes failure in order for us to succeed. And we're so
Mhm.
scared of failing or making a fool of ourselves that that's stopping us from growing.
Mhm. And, I think in that 100 days, there were so many lessons that I learned about myself, but one of them, and the crazy thing is, I've been a professional speaker for years now. And so I get up and speak at these massive big conferences and companies, like hundreds and thousands of people. But one out of the 7 areas of discomfort, one of the biggest ones for me was embarrassment and judgment,
Hmm.
which sounds kind of like an oxymoron because, when you're a professional speaker, you're putting yourself up in front of hundreds and thousands of people every time you get on stage for possible judgment. And yet, for me, that is not nearly as bad as one on one.
Hmm.
And when you said, like, looking foolish, sometimes that doesn't bother me at all, but going up, like, one-on-one with someone, and the possibility of another one was rejection, so the possibility that they're gonna say no, they're not gonna wanna do it, they're gonna think, "Why is she doing this?" Like, "Who does she think she is?" Like, that kinda stuff, those came up over and over and over for me.
Hmm.
And so when you go and especially when you're doing 100 days and you're stretching yourself in different ways, it's also, and again, I'm not, suggesting anybody go do 100 days because it's a massive, big commitment. But even doing small ones once a week, you'll start getting to know yourself better and becoming a lot more self aware. And when you're more self aware, you develop better relationships. You can communicate better. You know how to get out of your own way. You can be more in tune with the negative thoughts that
Hmm.
start popping up in your head and what you need to do to change those. So there's so many benefits to becoming self aware. But as long as you stay in your comfort zone, you're never going to really become self-aware because you're
Hmm.
never really teaching yourself how to learn and how to grow and develop.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm thinking we can do this with simple things like cold plunging. This is one of the benefits. We're out of our comfort zone and then we think we're going to die and we don't. Or maybe somebody has issues with touch and so they go and they get a massage, or eating different foods that they've never tried because the textures are funny and strange. There's so many ways that we can stretch ourselves in this way. For me, it would be dancing. There's something around dancing and like letting myself free in these public places where I know that that would stretch me, where other people that's like so easy.
Mhm. Well, Nikki, try pole dancing. That was one of
Oh
the
yeah.
ones I did, and I will tell you, it was uncomfortable. I
Oh
was like,
yeah.
"Man, my body just doesn't move." Like, in my brain, I'm like, "Oh, they do it," and I'm in my brain thinking, "Okay, I can do that," and my body was like, "Girl, I don't know who you think you are trying to," but it also just allows you to loosen up and get your body moving in ways maybe it hadn't moved in a while. And you
Mhm.
might find that you really, really enjoy whatever it is you're doing. One of the things I did was an aerial hoop, and I could not, or I think it was like a hoop and regular trapeze, aerial trapeze that day. And the trapeze was actually super small. And I'm 5'9", so I could barely get
Mm.
like my body on it. And the instructor was teaching me how to do something. It was at the very beginning of the class. And I was you were only holding on with one hand, and literally my body was hanging off, and the only thing holding me on was one hand and my feet. And I was grasping for dear life. And she said, "Okay, shift your body like this." I did it, and I totally
Oh my gosh.
fell. And it was at the very beginning, but it was such a great lesson that fall fast, fall first, kind of to what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know what happens. So great. It didn't hurt. You fell on the mat, Jessica. No big deal. Now that you know the worst that can happen, now you can go all in, because that was also where I was feeling the hesitation, is I was holding on so tight because I didn't want to fall. And I didn't get hurt at all when
Mhm.
I fell. The mat was like this big old thick mat, right? But in our brains, we keep saying, okay, if you fall, you're going to get hurt. But if you fall fast, fall first,
Mhm.
meaning make mistakes, you learn, you figure it out, and then you know what's there. And then you're like, okay, that's not that bad at all. Why was I building this up so much in
Yeah.
my head? And then you can really go all in, and it actually relaxes you a bit, because you go, okay, well, now I know that that's the worst that can happen. That's not that big of a deal. So let me really play. Let me really go all in. And
Mhm.
you start having a lot more fun. And that was another big realization I had. We were doing a mud run, and the number one thing you can guarantee in a mud run is that you're going to get muddy. And
Mhm.
so I would make my son, I started off making my son do all the things first, and then trying to figure out how I could really not get that dirty. And so there was one obstacle we were on, and I was trying to tiptoe, and you literally had to get in waist high. And before I got all the way in, I was hesitant. I was, I don't know, it's mud. And my son says, "Mommy, you're trying to not get messy, and you're missing out on all the fun." And that was like such an in your face moment
Mhm.
for me,
Mhm.
because it wasn't just about the mud. It's really about how are we showing up in life if we're wanting to be perfect, if we don't want to get dirty, if we don't want to get messy, if we don't want to fail, we miss out on all the fun for ourselves, but also all the fun. So going back to your podcast example, they're missing out on all the fun that, not just for themselves, but all the fun that other people can be having by hearing what they have to say.
Mhm.
And so they're actually doing a disservice, not for themselves, but for all the people that need to hear them. And so, when we're going through life that way, tiptoeing, not going all in, not open to play, we miss out on so much fun, but also on the lessons that we can learn from it in order to get better.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I have a women's group, and there was a huge group a couple weeks ago at my house, and we were talking about how we could honor our inner child and bring our inner child in to come and play more. And so I was
Yeah,
saying, let's go shooting paintballs at each other, or go axe throwing, or go bowling, but do bad bowling. Like
I
throw
love
it
it.
down the gutter intentionally, or go backwards. And they're like, all bowling is bad bowling, right? For all of us. But let's do things to bring out this playful inner child, because we don't do it
Mhm.
as much as adults. And when you were talking about the mud run, and the last time too, when we were talking about it, one of my favorite childhood memories ever was my friends were having some construction done behind their home. And my mom and I were over visiting them, and it had been raining, and it was super muddy. And my friend and I got a little bit muddy. And at some point, I think our parents gave us permission to just go for it. And I remember playing in this mud pile filled with water, and we were covered from head to toe in mud. It's one of my favorite childhood memories
I love it.
because we just got super nasty and we just played until it was time to go. And then they're like, "That's cool, just strip down." We were young enough where we could do that. Just strip down, and we're gonna just throw you in the shower. And as adults, we don't do that.
Mm-mm.
But how
Ever.
fun to be able to do that as adults, to just go play in mud all day
Yes.
or water or whatever it is, because we um, are so disconnected from the childlike nature that we had before.
It's so true. And even if you think about Halloween or if somebody has a costume party or dress up or anything like that, how many people actually go and participate in it?
Yes.
How many adults get dressed up? How many adults uh, say, okay, Halloween, I'm going to get dressed up, or they're having a costume party, I'm going to get dressed up, or I'm going to throw my own costume party. I had one of the 100 days, I threw a slumber party because my birthday just happened to fall in with the 100 days. And so I threw an all girls slumber party. It was like, how can we just get back to having fun? We did that. Of course, we had cake and ice cream, but we played games all night. We watched movies. Like, we just went back to what's it like to be a little kid again and have fun and just be playful, because we don't do it nearly as much as adults. We're serious, we're intense,
Yeah.
everything is, serious. We got to talk about this seriously. And it's like, no, but how can we not take things so serious? How can we have a little bit more fun? How can you invite more fun into your own life? And I
Mhm.
think so many people miss out on that. And it's such a great opportunity, not just for you, but to connect with other people as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I say this often, but when we're not stretching ourselves, when we're not pushing that discomfort envelope and then everything's just the same, then there's no growth. And I think, again, as we get older, we start to look for comfort and ways to not be uncomfortable. And what we need to be doing is stretching that envelope a little bit so that we can grow. So maybe we go and we go karaokeing and we realize we really love it, even though our voice sucks. It's like,
Yeah.
whatever, you know? And just stretching ourselves in those ways. And maybe it's about grabbing our friends, like we said, right? Having a sleepover or going axe throwing and getting our friends and we all get uncomfortable together. And then we realize, well, that was super fun to go axe throwing or do a murder mystery party or whatever. Maybe we
Oh,
want to do
yeah.
more of that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And some of the time we need to absolutely be doing them with other people, because that just invites a different kind of fun. And then some of them we need to be doing them by ourselves, right?
Hmm.
Because it's one thing about connecting with other people, and it's totally different to connect with ourselves, to learn and find out, okay, why do I like that? Or why does this make me uncomfortable? What's at the core of that? And to really
Hmm.
figure it out. A lot of times also we get to this point in our lives, especially if our kids are out of the house, or if we've been in a relationship for a while, that we're comfortable in. Like, we get to this point in our lives that we say, but who am I really? Because I've been spending so much time doing and being and giving to everyone else in my life, whether that's spouse, whether that's kids, whether that's coworkers, whether it's siblings. And yet you go, but what do I like? What do I believe? What do I value outside of that? A lot of people that I talk to through the Say Yes experience and in our group say, I'm at this point where I'm an empty nester, and I've been doing so much for my kids that I don't really know who I am outside of
Hmm.
them. And I think that that's such an eye opener, that if we look at and say, okay, well, why do I like this? Why don't I want to do that? We can really get to know ourselves better and then ask, well, am I doing that just because somebody else wants to do that? Or do I really want to do that? And
Hmm.
what are the goals that I really want in life? Am I around and surrounding myself with people who are championing and encouraging me to reach those goals? And if you don't have goals in your life, that's a big wake up call right there. Like, what are your goals and how can you start reaching them? One of the things I did in the 100 days is we did a touch your dream thing. So I went and test drove a brand new Corvette because touch your dreams. And so often, even if you're not living your dream, what's something small you can do to touch it, to get you one step closer to that? Because dreams aren't just these things that you think about and your imagination. They're things that you actually want to happen. But so often you just say, nope, that's so far
Yeah.
away. That's impossible. I don't even know how to get there. Well, you may not know how to get there today, but if you consistently touch your dreams and do things that you want to actually be doing in the way that you want to be living your life, it'll bring you closer to realizing that they can be a reality. And so, one of the things we have in the Say Yes experience is called a Say Yes bucket list. And oftentimes people think of a bucket list as the things you want to do before you die, but this is actually the things you want to do that make you feel alive for you to really
Mm-hmm.
start living. So you stop acting on autopilot and being in your comfort zone and going through routines. But what are the things that really will help you tap into your happiness and live intentionally? And so people put on that list like big, ginormous things, right? And they think it's not possible because it's so far away from where they are. But if you flip it around and think, okay, well, what's one thing I can do today to help me move toward that goal? So if it's taking, a dream trip, what's something you can do today to move you toward that goal? So maybe instead of going to Starbucks today, you put that money aside and you start saving the money that you would spend on Starbucks, or eating out once a week, you save that money in lots. You'd be able to save that money in no time, right? Things like that, where we endlessly spend money where we don't need to. Start putting that aside, or start thinking about how much PTO time you need for that, or
Mm-hmm.
request the PTO time that you need off for that. So then your PTO time might be next year. So then
Yeah.
great. Have from now until then that I've got to make it happen. So every little step that you take toward it, you start creating that into your realm of reality. Instead of just thinking and dreaming about it, it's about taking those micro steps every day. That's not big, but you're
Yeah.
doing something toward it.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah. I guess before we wrap it up, I'd like to just touch on how we tend to say yes to things that aren't in alignment, and how to say yes to the things that can help us stretch and grow, and not saying yes to everything.
So for me, I think it comes a little bit with age.
Hmm.
And specifically, what I do in my own life and work is that it's very easy for me to say no.
Hmm.
If it is not something I want to do, I don't feel compelled to do it. I think, especially if we're in our 20s, we tend to be a little bit more relaxed on that. But when we start to realize that time is finite, like we only have one life to live, and I am here to live that life. And if I don't want to do it, I will just say, no, I don't want to go.
Hmm.
For me, it's that simple. I think oftentimes people think that they need to have a reason, they need to give an explanation, they need to go into a story. You owe it to yourself just to say no. You don't need to give them any reason, any explanation. Just say no,
Yeah.
and then realize that you're staying true to who you are. So I think in order to get to the point where no becomes easier, if something's not in alignment, for you to recognize who you are and what you want. If you don't know what you want, you won't
Yeah.
know if what someone's asking you to do is in alignment with it or
Hmm.
not. And then you'll feel pulled and obligated to say yes,
Yeah.
because you don't want to let
Yeah.
them down. You don't want them to be mad at you, meaning like you're still living in that people pleasing state of mind. And
Hmm.
so once you know who you are, know what you want, you work past the people pleasing state of mind, because you're not here to live your life according to what someone else wants from you, according to what someone else expects of you, according to how someone else wants you to live your life. You're here to live your life
Yeah.
according to what you want and how you want, and be who you want to be. And when you know who that is, it's easy to say no. The challenge comes when you don't know who you are. When you
Hmm.
don't know who you are, then that's when you feel pulled in different directions. So if you're still in that place where you're struggling with saying no, start asking yourself, who am I really at my core? Like, what do I value? What do I believe? What do I want? And where do I want to go in life? If I could go anywhere, do anything, where would that be? And
Yeah.
then it may take you several times in asking that before you actually get clear on the answer.
Yeah.
That's the best tactic that I encourage people to do, is to really figure out who you are and start asking yourself some of those hard questions.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Yeah. Jessica, how can people reach you? What are some of the offerings that you have? I would love for people to, I'm going to throw this on the show notes as well, but I'd love for you to share.
Sure. So they can go to sayyesexperience.com. They can also download our free Say Yes template to help stretch them outside their comfort zone and into possibilities. And then for any type of keynote speaking, corporate events, or any type of Say Yes experiences for organizations, because we actually work and partner with organizations to put on Say Yes experiences, any type of things like that, they can go to jessicarector.com.
Guaranteed to be a fun time.
Yes.
Yeah. Jessica, thank you so much. I love this. I love this topic. I love your energy, and I want to thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me. It was such a great time.
Thank you for listening to the Connected Community Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please like, share, and subscribe. I can be found at www.nickyyoga.com, NICKYYYOGA.com. Until I see you again next week, I hope you have a beautiful day.